Hello and welcome to another episode of the Indie Alternative Podcast. It's me, Chris, and on this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by David Gedge. David won't need much of an introduction, but I'll give a little one anyway. He is the singer, songwriter and frontman of the band The Wedding Present, and we talk a lot about his songwriting process, his musical influences and collaborations, and also the upcoming 30th anniversary tour of Sea Monsters. It's a really fascinating chat, and thanks, David, for your generosity and time. Just before we hit the interview, here's just a quick reminder of all the ways that you can support the podcast. You can follow me on social media, and those links are in the show notes. Also, if you want to buy me a virtual coffee to say thanks and to support the podcast financially, you can do, and that link is also in the show notes. And lastly, if you've not left a review or rated the podcast, that really helps. So if you've got a couple of minutes to spare, please do that as well. But that's it for the waffle. Here's David. Welcome to the podcast, David Gedge. How are you?
Feeling a little bit jet lagged. I literally just arrived back from the United States on Saturday night, and after not sleeping for, I think it's about 28 hours because of the way the flights went. So yeah, feeling a bit weird at the moment, but we'll see how it goes.
Was it business or pleasure?
Pleasure, really, to be honest with you, because my wife's American, and obviously, because of the pandemic, she's not been back for several years. So she's kind of wanted to see her family and stuff, really. So to be honest, I was ensconced in an Airbnb for most of it, keeping out of the way, carrying on doing the things that I do here anyway, which is, writing songs and all the rest of it. So,
yeah. But
then at the end, we did have a week because her family's in Washington State, and then we flew down to California, theoretically to have a week in the sunshine, but it didn't really work out like that because it got quite cold.
Oh no,
rainy. So there you go.
And so, where's base for you in the UK?
Brighton.
Ah, cool. And I guess, what's it been like for you now things are starting to open up here in terms of playing live? Have you been chomping at the bit to sort of get back out there?
Kind of. I mean, we already started, actually, because we played the first shows in August last year that were allowed. And it felt a bit strange, to be honest. It felt a bit... no one was quite sure whether it was totally safe yet, and the audiences seemed quite tentative as well. The people trying to keep their distances and all that kind of stuff. So it felt a bit odd. And then we did a few more in November. We did some Sea Monsters 30th anniversary shows, and that felt a bit better, but still not completely there. So yeah, we actually start again in about a week, I think.
And how have the rehearsals been going for that? Have you been sort of managing to get together sort of quite regularly for that?
No, because I've not been here.
Of course, yeah.
For the last month. So, no, we actually start rehearsing this week. So, having said that, it is kind of the same set that we just played in November. I think there's a couple of changes, but
yeah.
I mean, it's the Sea Monsters 30th anniversary show. So half the set is stuff we played already, kind of thing. Stuff I've been playing for 31 years. So.
Yeah. Is it all kind of muscle memory now then, David, do you reckon?
Not really, no. I think, I'd love to say yes, but I think what happens is because there's so many songs now and they get recycled quite a lot. So I think there's probably over 300 if you include the covers and stuff. And so, I mean, there's a few obvious ones that I guess get played more than others, like Dalliance and My Favourite Dress and Kennedy and Brassneck. But for the vast majority of them, no, it's I have to relearn them, to be honest. I don't know whether it's just my brain that can't cope with it or what.
Well, I mean, the lyrics as well. I mean, because the lyrics are complex as well. I mean, how does that stay, or is that something you need prompts or help with in terms of being able to remember everything that you've written about and actually being able to connect to those songs again after so long?
Because my lyrics do get quite involved sometimes, and there's little stories and stuff. It's not just like verse, chorus,
Yeah.
And then repeat everything. I mean, Kennedy is weirdly, but most of them are. But actually, because I do my own festival down here in Brighton called At the Edge of the Sea, which we've been doing since 2009, I think. And one of the years, I got Emma Pollock from the Delgados to come and play, and I noticed that she had this little kind of attachment to the microphone stand, which was actually an iPad with the lyrics on it. And I thought, what a brilliant idea that is. So since I saw that, I've actually now put all my lyrics into a form which I can read from an iPad. I don't kind of read them out, but they are there if I need a prompt kind of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, that must be such quite a comfort considering all the vast.
Well, it is, to be honest, because to be honest, when I get going, I'm fine. But sometimes I'll be like, I'll do the first verse and do the chorus, and then I won't remember the first line of the second verse. And then so then you start to panic, I think, and you think, oh my God, it's coming up. But now if it's there, I don't have that panic. So I just look down, first line. And once I've got the first line, usually the rest of it comes. I suppose that's where the muscle memory comes in.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for songs where they just repeat the first verse, and it's the second verse.
I mean, it's just not my style really, because I always try and make the lyrics as interesting as possible. And I think it's a bit of a cop out sometimes when people do that.
Yes, yeah.
Repeating the stuff, but I mean, people don't seem to care. But but for my own personal reasons, I do like to kind of craft a full kind of varied lyric, if you like.
Yeah. I like to, on this podcast, take people back back to the beginning, and I love hearing about sort of your musical influences and how it all began. And with you, do you remember a time when you were kind of first got that passion for music and started writing?
I mean, to be honest with you, I can't remember a time when I've not had the passion, because I grew up. There's a photograph of me. I think I'm about 4 or 5 playing records on my parents' little record player, and I think even then I was pretending to be a DJ or something. I used to kind of work my way through my parents' record collection, and I've always been fascinated, to the point of obsession with music. I mean, a few other things as well, like comics and whatever, but music's always been there for me. And I think, people say, when did you decide to be in a group? And I don't think there was a point where I kind of woke up and said, okay, I'm going to be a musician, because it sounds weird, but I always thought I would be. I always kind of assumed at some point I would be in a band myself, or I'd be a DJ, or, maybe a writer for a music paper or something. But I always thought I would, have some connection to it, really. And so, I've kind of always done it. As soon as I could afford to, to buy instruments, I was buying guitars and keyboards, and I was messing around with them. I was starting groups with my friends at school and then at university. And it's just something I've always done, really, all my life, kind of thing.
Yeah. And was there any kind of lyricists and sort of artists that you kind of felt feel that you're your kind of main inspiration from back then?
I think lyricists, I've kind of always felt that pop lyricism in general is quite poor, to be honest with you, because I think you can get away with murder, because a lot of people don't even care about lyrics, and it's all about the tune and the kind of passion and the recording and the live sound and all that stuff. And I think people do get away with some terrible words in lyrics. But I think when I first started writing it was possibly verging on the pretentiousness. And then my girlfriend at the time said, you're a big fan of Lou Reed from the Velvet Underground, whose lyrics are very obvious, very conversational. I mean, he was singing about totally different things. Obviously, he was singing about pimps and drug pushers in Manhattan. But it was all quite kind of clear, really. There was no kind of metaphor and no hiding behind kind of poetic kind of imagery and stuff. And she said, why don't you write more in that style? And I think that did influence me. I wanted to make the lyrics very understandable and tell these little stories, which, I mean, occasionally they do get a bit vague or a bit kind of poetic, for want of a better word, but generally my lyrics are, people have said it's almost like a play, it's like a dialogue between two people or a conversation between two people, and I think that's the style that I settled upon very early, actually, and then I've kind of stayed with it, really.
Coming to the subjects that you write about and that kind of, but was there any kind of moment when you thought, actually, this is what I'm good at. This is how, instead of going down a political road or like a love me do type thing, this is, there's so much more nuance to this. And then was there a time, do you think, when you thought, this is how I'm going to write, and this is kind of what I'm good at?
It was more a case of me trying, to write other stuff, I guess political kind of ideas and stuff like that, and then being not very satisfied with it, and then I suppose the realization at that point was that maybe I should stick with doing what I'm actually quite good at, which is the conversational, the kitchen sink stuff. I mean, it's such a universal subject. It's kind of, people say, don't you get bored of writing about relationships, and I don't really, because it's kind of it's there all the time. If you look at any film or any, you read a book, or my favorite songs of history, it's always about kind of people falling in love or falling out of love, or jealousy or lust or betrayal, all those kind of things, and it's a whole universe of stuff there, really. And I think I've just always been very interested in it, I suppose, and then I kind of regurgitate that into the form of a lyric.
And also, you've got plenty of source material, as you said, but also people around you can be the source of such nourishment when it comes to that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I hear famously, I once said, I used to listen to conversations on the bus, really, because you get people arguing and stuff. And they say things, and you think, that would be a brilliant line for a song, or a title. Let's get my notebook out and write it down.
Did anyone ever come up to you and say, that song on that album, is that about me?
They do all the time, actually. But, it's a bit odd because I suppose, there's quite a few songs which are definitely about a certain relationship and a certain person, but a lot of them tend to kind of merge together. So, like, I'll take elements of ideas from stuff that's happened to me, in the last few years, and then maybe a bit of it will be something that I'll remember from, because I've got this massive archive now of ideas for songs and stuff. Something will be from 30 years ago. So often it can feel like it's the same person, but it's not. It's different people. And so people are often wrong, actually. People say, oh, yeah, I recognise myself in that song. And I'll think, well, it's not actually you, that bit. but this bit is. And they go, oh, really? So people are surprised. I think by the time I've manipulated them and kind of, worked them into a format where it's, it sounds okay in a song, it's often changed from the original kind of story, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it's like your star signs, isn't it? If you read those sort of things, you can take parts and elements out of everything. And that's what I think is so accessible about, your songs, is that, you can pick out things and it's not conventional and it's very relatable. And I think that's what attracts, I guess what I imagine was attracting, fans of your music.
I've never been compared to an astrologer before, but I'll take it.
So collaborating and stuff like that over the years, and it's been very important to you. And I know you've got lots of musicians that have come and gone throughout the sort of the lineup and things. But what's that experience like been for you? And how do you kind of select what to do and who to work with? If you've got just a vast network of people that you've met over the years?
Well, it's difficult, to be honest with you, because obviously, in my heart of hearts, I think it might have been nice to have, the Beatles or U2 had the same lineup, or Queen or whatever, apart from Freddie Mercury, obviously. Keeping the same lineup together. It sounds a bit kind of romantic, but obviously, quite soon that wasn't going to happen. Yeah. I think I was the final remaining member by 1993 or something. So that obviously quite a long time ago. And if I'm honest, I think I've benefited from the various collaborations we've had over the years, because people come into the band. And obviously, everyone's different, so everyone's got their own style of music, that they enjoy writing and listening to, and they've got their own inspirations and their own aspirations, if you like. And so I genuinely feel like I've been in kind of 6 different groups over the years, because it's changed so many times now, quite radically sometimes. And obviously I did the Cinerama stuff as well for a few years. So, I think, I'm quite proud of the fact that, apart from maybe the first couple of records, all the Wedding Present albums have got their own kind of feel, really, and, personality and sound. And we've moved on every time. To be honest, it's not the most commercial way of doing stuff, because once you've established a sound that's successful, people tend to expect that sound forever. And we definitely have not done that. So we've definitely lost fans along the way. Possibly acquired a few new ones and stuff. But I think as a body of work, I think the variety kind of holds up really well.
And so with regards to sort of co-writing and stuff, because you've always been obviously the main songwriter, and so the latest project that you've been doing this year, which is releasing that 7-inch single every month, and you've worked a lot with John Stewart, and so how did that come about, and what was there a change in terms of how you wanted to approach writing?
Not really, no. I think it's usually a case that I or another member or one of the couple of members of the band will have a basic idea, whether it be a little riff or a little sequence of chords or whatever, and then they'll send that to me or play it to me, and then I'll go away and kind of craft a song around it, really. And I think that's the way it's always been for most of the songs. And John he's just a new wedding present guitarist, so he's been doing that with me over the last couple of years. We've been working on his riffs, and Melanie as well, the bass player. She's a songwriter as well. So, and then once I've written a framework for a song, I make a little demo, and then we usually go into a studio and kind of argue about it for a couple of days until we get to a final state that everybody's happy with, and that usually becomes the song then.
Yeah. And so this idea for this the 7-inch single that you're doing this year goes back to 92, doesn't it, in terms of how you release singles? And so was that like I'd say obviously it was a deliberate thing, but what was the kind of catalyst for that?
Yeah, I can remember exactly, because it was in a rehearsal room in Wakefield in Yorkshire, and we were just, I think we were rehearsing for a tour or writing new songs or whatever. And our bass player at the time, Keith Gregory, he was a member of the Sub Pop Singles Club, which was obviously a label in Seattle, and I think they used to send you a 7-inch single every month. And you just said, wouldn't it be great if we could do something like this as a band rather than a label? And it was one of those ideas. Once we'd heard it, we thought, there's no way we can't do this because it's such a brilliant idea. And straight away, in about 15 minutes, we had it all kind of worked out that we'd do, we'd have matching sleeves, and we do it for a year, and we do an original song on the A side, cover on the B side, and there'd be a little box to put them in, and we did a video for each one, the T-shirt for each one. So it all seemed kind of, once we had that initial idea, that it was something we had to do, and so we just persuaded our record label at the time, RCA, to go along with it, and they did, thankfully. And so we just did it. And then fast forward to now, which is 30 years later, I kind of wanted to do something similar, with a nod to that, but not actually kind of recreate the Hit Parade again, as it was called in 1992. So it's a kind of a similar series. It's still 7-inch singles, and they're all, kind of matching sleeves and kind of build into a nice series, but it's not exactly the same as it was then. Yeah, well,
I suppose the landscape of how people consume music is completely different anyway.
Totally.
And so in terms of like just that operation, is it all on vinyl? Is it are you doing, or is the plan, to bring this to some sort of an album at the end?
Well, both times it's just been vinyl only. But 7-inch vinyl. I suppose the difference this time is, that all the tracks are also available on the digital, streaming services and all that stuff. So it's slightly different from then, because partly because there's no record shops anymore.
Yeah.
In those days, the only way you could buy this single was to go into a record shop and buy a 7-inch single, and that was it. Whereas now there's obviously, people, not every town's got record shops anymore. So we've done this subscription thing where you can actually get them, through us directly by mail order. But also, if you just want to hear the songs and the music, they're on the streaming services. So, yeah.
How have you got round this crazy vinyl production situation with this? Then have you found have you had to do this well in advance, or is it on pay to go?
No, I kind of bit of both, really. I think yes, we had we planned it well in advance, and to be honest, we've just been really busy writing the songs and recording them as we had a backlog of songs that was kind of building up over the lockdown, because we weren't playing any gigs or anything, and so it's just been a case of knocking those into shape and recording them and finishing them and mixing them. But yeah, I think it takes like 7 months or something between us kind of finishing the mix and it actually coming out on a record. So So we are kind of planning quite ahead. And the other thing was that the label that's coming out on is called Clue Records, and the person there, Tony, he did a lot of research on manufacturing companies, and there was only one company in Europe who could absolutely guarantee that we wouldn't get any delays in the vinyl. It's a company in Germany called Optimal, and they said, yes, if you can send us these tracks, we will make sure they're released on time. But because of that, we had to pay a premium because they're a bit more expensive than a normal company. Hence, the singles are more. I mean, it's lovely vinyl and it's all really well done, but it means that we had to. I think they retail for about £11 each, which obviously normally when we do 7-inch singles, we sell them for £5 or something. So it's kind of we've had to pay this price in order to guarantee the series and the quality, really.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, I suppose. You can probably nowadays. You can charge probably a little bit more because it's probably deemed or perceived as being a premium product, which it is, because there's so much warmth to the record now than there is to like listening to MP3s and things like that. And there's such a real big appetite for that sort of media.
Yeah, there is. It's funny how it's kind of turned on its head, isn't it? All the pressing plants kind of disappeared in the 90s because nobody wanted vinyl anymore, and now suddenly everyone wants vinyl. And I think a lot of factories are too scared to open up in case it's just a fashion and it goes again. But I remember a time when the merchandise, we used to sell mainly CDs, and then occasionally someone would ask for the vinyl, and that's totally reversed now. People don't care about the CDs anymore, and they say, "Oh, have you got the vinyl things?" Which is a bit of a pain because obviously they're heavier and bigger to cart around on tour. But it seems to have gone that way again.
I just wanted to ask you about John Peel as well. I mean, that whole kind of Peel connection. What was that? How important was that? And what was it like at the time for you guys?
Well, it was crucial really for us because at that time, especially, for a band like us who were from an alternative kind of background, he was the only gateway really to any success. Really. I mean, you could send demos out and maybe get gigs at your local pub or whatever, but as soon as we released our first single, and I think Peel played it about 10 times, people started coming to us and say, "Oh, come and play in our venue, come and play in our indie night or whatever." So he, and then the NME reviewed it and the papers reviewed it, and so it's he was a catalyst for all the bands of our type. Really, it's completely different now, obviously, because, with the internet and YouTube and all the rest of it. There's a lot of little, a myriad of ways to get your music out there. But in those days, it was just Peel, really. And we were very, fortunate, I suppose, that he liked the band. But then again, in some ways, it sounds a bit weird, but because I'd grown up listening to that program from being a teenager onwards, to the point of obsession, really. Hardly ever missed a show, and so we were kind of destined to be a John Peel band in a way because I was just listening to music he was playing, and that was influencing what I was doing and how I wanted to sound and stuff. So, we were always kind of going to be of that ilk, I think. So it would have been really disappointing had he not been a fan after all that. But as I say, thankfully he was.
And this other approach that you had was just having as much control as possible over your music in those early days. Were you something that you consciously decided that you didn't want to go down a very kind of, not mainstream, but, a label? I mean, obviously it was inevitable that just due to the sheer kind of interest in you that you needed to probably go down that road eventually. But in the early days, it was something you kind of avoided.
Yeah, well, even when we did sign to RCA and then Island Records and then Cooking Vinyl, we had the same control anyway because, I don't know. To me, it's just always been really obvious that if you're in a creative business or whatever this is, you don't want to have meetings with people who then will ask you to change things because it doesn't fit in with their idea of how to sell it, if you know what I mean. So we always said, we want complete artistic control. We don't want anyone in the studio from the record label saying, "Oh yeah, turn the vocals up" or whatever, or influencing what we did on the sleeve or the videos or anything. So, but to me that I think that's really obvious. Why would you want some business person come in to say you got to change the way you look or sound? I mean, I suppose the answer is, well, if you want to be big, yes, you follow their advice and they will make you more commercial. But that wasn't the be all and end all for us. I don't think. We never had this idea that we're going to become this enormous group. So we just wanted to make records which we were proud of, really, and it stayed ever since. There's definitely certain roads we could have gone down where we probably would have got a big name producer in and sounded a bit more commercial and stuff. But would we have been happy with the results? I'm not sure we would have, really. So we've always stayed away from those kind of avenues, I guess.
There's definitely a very characteristic guitar sound that you have, and there's an attack and an urgency to it. I wondered how that evolved from the kind of over the years, or it's something that you developed by just how you were taught or how you learned, or was it just some other musician or guitarist that you were kind of emulating?
Well, I think we were always meant to be a guitar band, and I think we always had this idea that we didn't really want to sound like anybody else. So I tried to be uninfluenced by people. Like I said before, for instance, the Velvet Underground were a favourite band of mine, and there is an element of that kind of the rhythm guitar in their songs, which I guess influenced me, along with some of the bands that British bands around the time, like maybe Joseph Kay and people like that. But I think the main catalyst was when we had a year when we had about 10 drummers. And we couldn't keep hold of a drummer for some reason. And then we finally met Sean, who was ultimately the drummer in the band, who went on to do George Best and stuff. And when he joined, I think we finally had people of the same mindset, and we were all Peel fans, and we all liked that kind of fast, energetic music. And I think he was he sped us up, really. I think he was the catalyst for that. So we started speeding the songs up a little bit, and we were thinking, this sounds great, actually. A, it doesn't sound like anybody else, and B, it's making our songs sound better and more exciting and more powerful. So, we just got faster and faster, and suddenly I had, I'd acquired this, like you say, this guitar sound, which was kind of my own, which was this rhythmic, kind of very fast, jangly style. And that's kind of been there all the time since. I mean, we don't, if you look at the very early songs, it was all that. It was just this kind of one-dimensional approach of playing the music really fast and aggressively. But later on, it's varied, and I've tried other things as well. But it just kind of evolved, really. With the people being in the band at that time, having those ideas.
Obviously got the tour, the Sea Monsters 30th anniversary tour that you mentioned earlier on. But after that, have you got what's the kind of, and obviously the singles that you're releasing this year. So you're kind of pretty sewn up for 2022, aren't you?
Kind of. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, what other plans have you got? But I don't think you've got any room for any more.
Well, I suppose the only thing the other thing that springs to mind is I've done. I don't know if you saw that I released volume 1 of my autobiography a couple of years ago. It's in comic book form, actually. It's called Tales from the Wedding Present. And the plan is to release a second volume of that in November as well. I think it's November. So it's basically, doing the Sea Monsters concert through the year and releasing these 12 7-inch singles. And then when that book comes out, I think we might do a little book tour of some sort, maybe like a stripped back kind of acoustic kind of tour, because we did these. I don't know if you saw, we did we did an album over lockdown. It's called Lockdown. Yeah. And it was just semi-acoustic, stripped back kind of versions of Wedding Present and Cinerama songs, and people loved it, really. So we got a lot of requests from people to do that live in some way. And I'm thinking maybe we could tie that in with a little book tour for the second volume of the biography. And we'll do that. Maybe play kind of smaller places and do like semi-acoustic type stuff. Well, I'm thinking that because my co-writer is called Terry De Castro, and she was the bass player of the Wedding Present for many years, and she lives in Los Angeles now. But I was thinking, she could come over and she could maybe interview me on the stage, and we could do like a Q&A thing, and then we'll do a little acoustic set. So, I mean, it's just different, really. It's just an interesting idea. So that's the other thing that we're kind of aiming for this year.
Well, the songs also, they take on a new lease of life, don't they, when they're sort of stripped down and played in that way. And so is there a sort of chunk of catharticism that goes along with that? Do you feel differently performing them, and is it bringing different emotions out in you, especially after all sort of legacy of the music as well?
I think with the acoustic versions, you've kind of you've got to be quite selective, because not every song works really. Because some tracks will kind of rely more on production and guitar sounds and things. So inevitably, you're kind of drawn to the kind of the more songy songs, if you like, the ones that work with just a vocal melody and an acoustic and make and I think so. Yeah, it's interesting how the songs do take on a different life in that format, really, because away from the loud guitars and the distorted bass and the massive drums, you're more reliant on the actual vocal melody and the lyric, and in some ways it becomes more poignant, because it's more naked, really, and I think it's a bit more intimate, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's been. I never really, people have said for years, why do you never do like an acoustic album or something? And I've kind of thought, well, it doesn't really feel like me, really. I've always seen myself as this loud guitar band. But then with the lockdown, obviously we had to do it because we didn't do anything else. Yeah. And I really enjoyed it. And there's actually a second volume that's going to be coming out in summer, because we initially did it for the virtual edition of my festival at the Edge of the Sea, and we did that in 2020. And then obviously in 2021, the pandemic was still going on, so we did a second virtual festival, and we recorded another 12 stripped back acoustic songs for that, and so that's going to be the second volume, of the series, I suppose. Hopefully there'll be no third volume, because the pandemic will be finished now.
Yeah, God, fingers crossed. And so the book then, because you mentioned the book, but how did that come about then? Was it something that you wanted to do always, in terms of like especially in cartoon form? How did it come about?
I never had a burning desire, no. I mean, I have actually been approached by publishers over the years saying, if you ever want to do your autobiography, we'll publish it for you. And I've kind of said, yeah, I don't know, I'll think about it, kind of thing. And then Terry, who I mentioned was the former bass player, she had this idea to do my biography from her point of view, which was kind of meeting me, having, joining the band, joining Cinerama, then The Wedding Present, and all the kind of, the conversations we had while she's in the band. She would use that as a basis for this kind of life story thing, and she wanted to incorporate some comic books stuff into that, because I've always been a massive fan of comics anyway, like growing up, and graphic novels and stuff. So we did that, and then she decided. Well, between us, we decided that we like the comic books, better than the rest of it, if you like it. And we just thought, why don't we make the whole thing a comic book series? So it started off as comics that we would actually, write. And then I've got a friend called Lee Thacker who lives in Birmingham, who's an artist, and we'd send him stories, and he puts them into comic book form. And we released these comics for the last few years. And then we decided that we've got enough now to actually start compiling them as graphic novels, and we released volume 1 in 2020, I think it was, and then we're doing volume 2 this year in chronological order. So the first volume was kind of me growing up and then forming the band and stuff, and then the second one, when it comes out, will be the early years, the George Best years, I suppose you'd call them. But I love it, it's like me in a comic book. It's brilliant, and it's weird because we do these little stories. She'll ask me a few questions and she'll put little scripts together, and I'll go back and forwards with us, across the Atlantic for a few times, and then we'll eventually send it to Lee, and then it comes back and he's transformed it into these visuals, like a storyboard for a film or something. It's always really kind of amazing to see it come to life like that, and I really enjoy doing it. So, yeah.
Well, David, I'm going to let you go. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining me and talking to me about everything, really. And it's been fascinating to hear about what you've been up to and how you got there. So we've got the tour to look forward to, and then obviously the second part of the book, and then next year, who knows, more music, hopefully.
Yes, I don't know what else am I going to do.
I'm going to put you under pressure, but yeah. Thanks so much, David. I've really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome.